It's a lively night in Lagos, and our main character, Oloture, who bears the undercover name Ehi, opens the scene, followed by a group of other half-naked ladies. They walk past a notorious pimp, Chuks, and his girl Blessing. They imply that Chuk's constant presence around Blessing may be unfavorable to the other girls, as Vanessa, the most seasoned prostitute amongst them, quickly points out. Vanessa would later find out that Chuks is the least of her problems when she notices that Ehi is found appealing to her favorite patron, seeking for something fresh and succulent for the night in her stead. This results in a little scuffle between the girls, as Ehi is reluctant to follow the man out of fear for Vanessa. The man ignores her and takes Ehi to the brothel room. And when the man was getting ready for some heavy workout sessions, she excuses herself and escapes from the room through a toilet window. The next morning, Ehi makes a tired return to the old and shabby whorehouse where she lives with the other girls. The house is governed by Sandra, a strict landlady who also oversees and collects taxes on their previous night's earnings. Gossip of the weird stunt Ehi pulled the previous night had gone round, and her colleagues talked down on her, accusing her of being slack and not ready for business. Vanessa is at the forefront of this as expected. Sandra intervenes, but chastises Ehi, reminding her of the upcoming rent collection and why she must make a profit the next night. Ehi returns to her room and meets Linda, her roommate. She offers Ehi a smoke stick to ease her pain, but the latter refuses. Linda then proceeds to offer emotional support and tends to her wounds. Ehi seizes the opportunity to manipulate Linda into revealing her plans to relocate abroad with her sister to her, while expressing her desire to do the same. According to Linda, the plans are supposed to be highly confidential because the smuggler could get really angry at her for divulging any of such sensitive info. She also goes on to reveal the little installmental payments she has been making to the same woman, which she says was supposed to amount to the tune of $1,200 in total. In the end, Linda promises to put in a word for Ehi the next time she meets with the smuggler. The next evening, while the girls were out, another client specifically requests for Ehi. Like an old professional, Ehi briefs him of the pricing to the services she provides. And a few seconds after, the others watch them leave. The client turns out to be her colleague Emeka and longtime boyfriend. He is also a party to the undercover mission she is running at the brothel. Their meeting is actually just for a routine checkup. He commends her acting skills back at the brothel, but warns her not to get carried away. When she returns, she meets Blessing outside, who just received her usual dose of ass, whooping from Chucks, and passionately advises her to walk away, but she will later end up regretting this. The following day, Linda makes one of the usual payments to the smuggler, Alero, an owner of a fabric shop in the market. After the submission, Linda asks if it's possible for her 17-year-old sister to join the trip. Alero's response is positive, as being a virgin is seen as an advantage. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Linda, Ehi had followed her only to get caught right after. And just like Linda had feared, this angers Alero, who thinks Ehi is a spy. And when Ehi asks if she can join the trip, Alero refuses and sends them away. Outside the shop, Linda expresses anger towards Ehi for taking matters into her own hands. In spite of that, Ehi still tailed Alero, who appeared to be in an argument with someone over the phone about the shortage in the number of girls. Ehi informs Emeka of her findings. The scene after that gives us a glimpse into the lead character's true personality as she is seen visiting the simple-styled home her mother lives in. It is obvious that she was given a loving upbringing. When she returns to the whorehouse the preceding day, she expresses her remorse about the day before by gifting Linda a local delicacy made by her mother, while pretending to have purchased it from a street vendor. Linda grudgingly accepts her apology before letting her know that Madame Alero had invited her, Ehi, and a couple of other girls to a party with top politicians the next evening. Later, as Ehi arrives home from work, Chuks, who derives pleasure in harassing ladies, corners her and threatens her for advising Blessing to run away from him, while also seizing the moment to mention his doubts about her. Alero picks the two girls the following evening. She demands yield to the various bidding of the wealthy politicians, no matter how odd or difficult it might seem. At the party, Alero and Ehai properly acquaint themselves. She accepts to join the trip on the condition that she prove herself by spending a night with the host of the party, Chief Phillips, a seemingly harmless and soft-spoken man. But Ehai was smart enough to understand the relationship between a prey and predator in the ecosystem. So she deliberately spills the drink the man offers her, and when she claims to have developed a stomach ache in an attempt to slip off, he stops and offers some pain relievers. He drugged her and forced himself on her. This isn't his first rodeo, as he could be persistent with unsuspecting girls, using different schemes and tactics before drugging and molesting them. After the party, when Alero comes to get her, she shows no concern for Ehai. The single act from the chief plunged Ehai into a spiral of depression. No amount of scrubbing could rid her of the ugliness and the deep resentment inside, and the need to be cleansed and heard pushed her to find salvation in church. Her radio silence after 24 hours raises concerns for Emeka, who immediately relates his worry to his superior. But he is advised not to act on his fears, else he would risk blowing up her cover. Sometime later, Alero presents Ehi with her share from that night and informs her of a vacant spot for the Europe trip and how, unlike other, she would be a forza speciale, a term used for premium girls. As she is about leaving, Alero is accosted by Chooks, telling her to leave his girl blessing alone. Alero doesn't take him seriously, and when he persists, he is made to face his match. Finally, he backs off. In the preceding scene, Ehai asks Chooks help to deal with Philip, the politician that raped her. He cowers even more when he realizes it is someone with so much more power than himself. Alero is found in a meeting with her boss, Tony. He voiced his disappointment in the inconsistency in the number of girls she provided, bringing to her notice that there were men at the top who would not hesitate to take his neck for mistakes of such, and that he would not hesitate to take hers if need be. She assures him of Ehai's willingness to join, going ahead to show him a picture of her. Tony brands her troublesome. According to him, pretty girls are always troublesome. After some days have passed, Ehai is back to streets, although no longer her usual self. Emeka calls for her again, and she reluctantly follows. And behind them, Linda watches with suspicion. In the drive, he could feel her off mood. When he asks about the party, she tells him it is just a rich people's party and that they do what they do best, choosing not to tell him about her rape. When they get down, he threatens to pull her out of the mission, but she is stubborn and is vocal about wanting to continue. "It is no longer your story anymore but mine," she declares. She pays Alero the fee after being informed that they would depart the following day. Meanwhile, Beauty, Linda's younger and more innocent sister, arrives by bus to Lagos after Linda called her to request for her. Ehai still continues to hide the truth from Emeka, but rather promises to get back with him when it is all over. He leans in and tries to kiss, but Ehai isn't in the mood. The girls are then driven by bus, while Alero's car tag closely behind. They are taken to an isolated house far away from the heart of the city. Here, they are meant to be given orientation and receive information, prepping them for the life awaiting them in Europe. The smugglers they meet here are verbal, violent, and aggressive, who with harsh tones bring to their notice the rules of the place, one of them being no phones. They are then searched, and every piece of electronic device on them are taken off and confiscated. Ehi tactfully hides hers, and after searching thoroughly and finding nothing, they let her go. They are then shared into 3 groups, with the sisters being separated. Emeka reads the report that Ehai left behind and learns about the rape and the ruthless perpetrator. He is outraged and tries to call her, but all he gets is a voicemail. He visits the whorehouse, where Sandra, the landlady, informs her about Ehai's relocation. He then goes out to look for her, mistaking some other prostitutes for her until he runs into Vanessa. She throws curses at Ehi for making things difficult for her, even in her absence. When she tells him of Ehai's travel to Italy, he is left stunned. Ehi, who had sneaked into the bathroom with her phone, then calls Emeka after describing her location to him. He promised to come get her. The next day, the smugglers taught them how to stand and walk seductively, followed by an additional session of how to lap dance properly. Beauty, Linda's little sister, who has now come to the realization that they were being prepped for prostitution, gave a terrible performance. When it gets to Linda's turn, she is praised for her expertise, but she is more worried for her sister and her well-being. The girls are then taken to a forest where a priest carries out fetish and diabolic rituals on them, coercing them to take an oath not to go against their bosses when they get to Europe, while making them lie in separate caskets. This is one of their methods of instilling fear in them, while providing a sort of assurance to the smugglers. Meanwhile, Emeka leaves the police station in disappointment when he learns that the special unit will be unavailable until tomorrow. He then proceeds to the politician Philip's office, where he later finds him in the restroom. He informs Phillips of his profession and his awareness of his evil deeds, before giving him some good rounds of beating and threatening to return for him and his friends. When the girls return from the shrine, Alero issues them fake passports, a fictitious contract that binds them to their new smugglers. Being intelligent, Ehai tries to read the content of the contract, but Madame Alero is deliberately evasive and coerces her into signing without asking any more questions. The passport bears different identities. Ehi is assigned to Kenya, while Linda is assigned to South Africa. Linda proceeds to ask Ehai for her phone, which the latter initially denies having, but eventually she promises to leave it under Linda's pillow. Linda promises to be careful, but at night she gets caught while on the phone with her mother. She doesn't deny being the owner of the phone, so for breaking one of the most important rules of the house, she is beheaded in front of her sister and the rest of the girls as a lesson. The fact that the smugglers are unsure of who Linda was in contact with raises concern for them. They then query and beat up Ehai and Beauty, but mostly Ehi because of her closeness to Linda. Ehi refused to talk because doing so might get her killed. The police stormed the compound the next morning, but the smugglers had already fled. Even though they instructed Emeka to stay back, he still followed them. He is then alerted to the presence of a phone and a covered-up corpse near the pool. After checking and confirming that it was not Ehai, it dawns on him that she could be in so much more trouble than they anticipated. He immediately begins driving towards the Nigeria-Benin Republic border, deciding that since the smugglers have been compromised, their next option would be to find a way out of the country. That proved to be a correct guess, as they were already at the border and bribing their way through. Meanwhile, on the bus, one of the smugglers steps down, and Ehai and Beauty quickly take advantage of the opportunity to flee, but they are apprehended. After telling him that they needed to use the bathroom, he leads them to a spot. When he notices that they were taking too long, he went to check on them, but they had fled. He gave them a hot chase, but was only able to catch Ehai and carry her back into the bus. On the other hand, Emeka had just arrived at the border, but is denied entry by the military personnel who refused to listen to his explanations. At that point, Beauty ran past him on her way to freedom, and he is intrigued but not curious, so he just watches her go. The film concludes with the unintentional smuggling of Ehai, an undercover journalist. If you like the video, please like and subscribe to help the channel out. Drop a comment telling us what you think, with perhaps a recommendation of what you would like to see next.